Hello. Sorry about the poor quality of this, but it is very early in the morning, and I usually rely on natural sunlight. I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and for the past several years, I have been dealing with harassment from the police. Um, I've been documenting this. I stopped because I kind of bought into the idea that if I kept secrets like an abused child and ignored it, then the constant surveillance and attack on me would stop. I've been a part of Black Lives Matter protests and do, you know, racial like work that just explores social issues. And I, share that work and put that work out there. And it seems, and I've also complained about the policing, not because of racism, but because I felt like there was a serious drug problem, and other people in my neighborhood constantly call the police about the situation that was going on. And I had like people that I chatted with in the drugstore, and they were getting robbed all the time. And you know, it's not that the police don't need help or they should be able to deal with everything, but the response I got was just a public relations nightmare for them. And I made a complaint about it. I didn't go on the news or anything, or I didn't post, but they said if I didn't like it, I should move. And I did eventually move, but I also made complaints. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm dealing with retaliation, is that I went to the Prime Minister and I was like, and I don't even think that's funny. And I'm not here for looking for approval. In terms of like living my life, and they began to monitor my phone, and everywhere I went there was like either a cop car when I drove, like driving behind me, driving slowly behind me, driving beside me, flanking me, or when I stopped driving, but when I walked too, helicopters. This is not like a really crime heavy city compared to other places where there's helicopters all the time, and they'd be flying in front of me. They called other police stations when I traveled to harass me. Yeah, everywhere I go. Like, I don't know if like you go out and in a very small city with not as much crime and proper gun legislation, and you see helicopters every single time, and not only just like, but kind of flying above you in circles, like, like every single time. But that was a transition from the cop cars following me. And then they've done this twice, like everywhere I went, like a fleet of cars. And I have special connections with news, knowing that this had nothing to do with a news story or any sort of big crime or anything like that. That these 50 cars, and it's like intimidation, and it's sort of this coercive reinforcement of things. And I think like if we allow these things to happen, then all of us lose a society that works. When I was growing up, there was a lot of crime in the cities that I lived in marginalized communities. And people really wanted to know if there was a biological reason for these, crimes in these marginalized cities, and they wanted to do these like tests. And of course it wasn't a biological reason. I mean, yes, it's a biological reason because humans are a part of the primate family, and every single primate and probably every single creature is capable of fighting and capable of enacting violence, like every creature on the earth. So yes, but really, it's conditions that you live in, and eventually people figure that out. But they didn't understand how allowing certain communities to fail would eventually spread throughout the whole country. And America's in trouble. I'm American, and it's in trouble because we're not creating a community of care in our society with anybody. And we watch movies and television. It's all about, coercion and violence and guns and all these things. And it's really like, but where's our community of care? Where are we taking care of the least among us? I didn't necessarily, when the drug addictions were happening, I wanted those people to be helped, but it was not a safe situation. And that situation has like spread throughout the city. And so now there needs to be something else, and it needs to be compassionate. And I think that our city is answering that. And in the meantime, I think, but what can't happen is if people are upset about it and trying to make it safer and call upon the police for help, to callously speak to people without compassion and understanding about what we're experiencing right now, and to respond to me in that way, it was just like, and then to retaliate and to harass me for years is completely wrong. I do creative stuff, right? I do like stuff that's like, I realized I was TAing for video games, and it was like the stuff I was doing like was your basic video game plot, and I was like kind of doing, I think that was used to foment retaliation against me. I'm an artist and I'm a creator, and we have the right and the freedom as creators to tell stories, and explore our society and explore what all those things mean, and to make people wake up. And we live in a democracy. We don't live in a country that crushes people's right to speak, especially if you're exploring a topic with even if it's provoking, like the greatest writers, Aldous Huxley and George Orwell, and you name it, Dickens. All of these people explored society in a way that was not appeasing to the powers that be. And they all challenged our trajectory that we were on. And these are our greatest writers. And these are the people, I believe, that literally save us from going down negative paths. I think artists are so important. And I'm living in a community where my activism, my demand for accountability, and my artist's work is being retaliated against. And there's sort of like, when I say stuff, I'll just like record myself on my phone like I'm doing right now, and I won't post it. It'll just be for my own, like, get it off my chest, feel like I'm talking to someone walking down the street, and like, getting stuff off my chest without seeming like I'm talking to myself. And I am retaliated against because our phones are being tracked and monitored. You have so many ways that people can find out where you are on your phone. You don't even know it. And I have lived with this for years and realized that I'm not, it's a pattern that I'm not making up, I'm not projecting. I have lived and lived and lived and lived with this, and the system of coercive control within the government and within the policing is really out of hand. And the hope, I guess, is that I'm cowed and intimidated into being silent, and that's not what's going to happen, and that's not what's happening. I've recorded, and I am uploading every single time I go out, and there's just helicopters, I'm walking the dog, and there's just like in the dog park, and it's empty. There's helicopters. Go to the grocery store, there's helicopters. Do this, do that, there's helicopters. Sit in my backyard, and they're always doing the same thing, spinning around in front of me. And no one I know has this experience every single day of their lives. And then sometimes I was walking down the street, and there was like, I left my phone because I was like, well, they track you on the phone. But I think there's other ways of tracking you too. And I'm one of the only black people in the neighborhood, and I feel definitely watched. But I went to the grocery store, and I came back, and I got like a sense, right? It was before this happened. I got like the hackles on my neck, and I was like, When I went up my street, and I went up this street. It was not my street, but I went up the street leading to my street. My street's like perpendicular to it. And I go to the street right before my street, which is perpendicular to the street I'm biking up. And all these cop cars and everything are coming down. And this cop makes us sit and not move. And there's like no reason. Like, they're all going that direction. I'm going here. And he's like pointing to me and looking at me. And like, I got the sense that they're really upset that I didn't react to that. And I'm also like highly intuitive. I get the sense that they want this to be mentioned and they want this to be known or whatever. And they go, well, it's going to be mentioned. It's going to be known. And I was like, this is really weird. And I just got up and I went home. But I'm a person of faith, so I knew that God was with me. And they tried it again yesterday. I'm like biking around, and there's like all these cars, and everywhere I go, they're there, and there. It was just so, and I can get into the details of it. Like they're going down the street in this direction, and so I take my bike over on the other street that's also going in that direction, and they go to that street to go down that same direction. Like, say they're going north, so they're going, I guess, that way, which is, say that's west, I think. I don't know. It's probably not. Yeah, no. That's east. That's west. And I think that that's north. Yeah, and that's south. So they're going north on this street. Only for me to see them going west on the next block. And it's just like, what are you doing? And I guess it's to... I guess they're I guess they're happy that I'm talking about it, and they're happy, whatever. It was just a show of absurdity, and I feel like a lot of it is, I complained, I wanted to hold them accountable, I did not like how they handled that. They're public servants, and these people are in the streets, and I don't want to like police drug addiction in that way. I think that there has to be other methods because it doesn't work. But in the meantime, like, something has to be done, because I don't know, I felt so bad for the ladies in the drugstore and the business owners around there, because us too, you leave a bike on the porch, and you can't do that, but you leave them chained up and they all get stolen. And which is whatever, don't leave your bike outside. But then they go in the the drugstore, and they steal from there, and then they camp out and do drugs, and then people are sleeping in the whatever, and it's like, something else has to happen. And I don't believe in just penalizing and criminalizing, but something else has to happen. And if you're trying to live and somebody's talking to you that way, that's not right. And it's just not right. And when you're a public servant, you're held accountable. We're all held accountable in our lives. And so, yeah, I complained about it. But you don't then retaliate. You take the complaint and you improve what you do. And you come up with solutions and answers. And I actually think that they did come up with some possibilities to, I think there has to be a different way besides just, they can't just arrest people. They come back out. It doesn't really work. And I agree that it's overburdened for them to do that. But that doesn't mean that I have to bear the brunt of it. It doesn't mean that anybody does, right? And that's just like a public relations, like, you just don't talk to people like that you're supposed to serve and protect. And so I think that this big retaliation came at me because of that. I remember I didn't like the house that we lived in, but I wanted to leave the city, the province. I wanted to just leave. And I remember 2 police officers were on my front walkway. And I was like, oh no, I figured something went down with the people who were, addicted. And I would just watch so many things go down in that parking lot where I live next to. I mean, there's always something going on. I watched people get in a fight. I had people crying at night. I just, like, everything was going on over there. And this was like a posh part of town. And so I was like, oh no, something's going down. Somebody got robbed, So I said, hey, what's going on? And they just looked at me and just turned away. And I was like, hello, what's going on? And this woman cop says, you're pretty paranoid, aren't you? I don't know if it's the same cop who moved next door. And I was like, there's two uniformed police officers on my front walkway. What? And I was like, almost like they snapped out of it, and they're like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, like whatever. Like it was just like so many weird things. And I was like, oh, they're like, we're having awareness in the neighborhood. And I was like, good, because there's so many things happening in that little area over there. And like I said, I'm not just like, punish them for their drug addiction, punish them for their history of child abuse and displacement, punish them, but yet still do something, like still. And now we have the situation where all over the world there are tent cities. It's like the world is affected by this, like whatever it is that we're not handling correctly. Just like when I was young and in marginalized communities and poor communities, there was gun violence, there was this, there was that, and now it's all spread all over the country. And there should have been a community of care, at that point. There should have been steps and measures that were taken besides penalizing drug use, because it just doesn't work. It doesn't actually stem the tide. There needed to be jobs and infrastructure and counseling, and my bloodline, like my community, needed extensive therapy for intergenerational trauma. I have lots of ideas, like, don't get it twisted. And there should have been so many things, because now this sort of epidemic of gun violence is all over the country in America. And where will it spread? And now, the people that were sleeping in the parking lots, it's everywhere. And so let's come up with some creative problem solving. But if you have people in the community who are upset about it and are trying to deal with it, and you're just mad at them for bothering you, but you're a public servant, that's not right. And then to retaliate for years is also not right. And I notice that when I say just things on my phone, whatever, I'm upset, whatever, I never share them. I don't go on social media anymore. I mean, if I do go on social media, I post comedy, so look out for that. But like this whole thing has just turned into it's coercive and it's Pavlovian, and it's guiding us into a state of totalitarianism and fascism and the kinds of things that they had in Eastern Bloc countries. And there's this desire to and I won't stand for it. This is a democracy. I'm not saying things to please people or not to please people. I believe in the law and I believe in obeying the law. But part of the law that we have is our freedom of speech. And I mean, I guess if you're saying hate speech to someone and you're posting it all over, whatever, and you're putting it out there, things that can cause harm, that there are ambiguities and nuances in there that, should be debated and examined. But if I'm talking on my phone to nobody or to my mom or whatever, even if I'm upset, even if whatever, I don't get to be policed for that. And I don't get to be policed for asking the police to address issues in our community, whether it's through Black Lives Matter, whatever it is. I don't get to be harmed for that. That is these are public servants, and I want to be protected. These are the people assigned to protect us, and I want to be protected. And I don't feel like calling people to be accountable means that I then get retaliated against, or that I talk on my phone and then there's a sort of Pavlovian, I'm going to fly above you in my helicopter, I'm going to follow you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they called other police stations when I traveled, because it happened in other police stations, and I know that they did. I know it. And I'm really done with that. I'm going to post this. I'm going to talk about how I feel, and I'm going to walk around safely in our democracy We are not in other countries where there is no democracy. And it's worth preserving. And I won't give that up. I won't say what people want me to say on my phone and, or on a post or whatever, and then be afraid for myself. That's not right. That's not the world that we live in. And I think that we have to resist that as much as we possibly can. People are in this country to live how they want, worship who they want, have relationships with who they want. And there are laws, and those laws prevent us from transgressing the boundaries of others, and the physical boundaries of others. And those are important, and we have to uphold those laws. I believe that. And all I've asked them to do, and I understand, like, they weren't, like, mental health, like there's police deal with crime, and they are doing things to address mental health and issues, which I think drug addiction is. But in the meantime, there are safety issues involved in drug addiction. There's just safety issues for people. There's safety issues walking down the street. There's just safety issues. They were calling us names and yelling at the women, and people were off their meds and being, and stealing and going into the stores and stealing and stuff. And, like, those are safety issues that should be addressed, and we shouldn't be told to move because, and I get it that people are overwhelmed, but somebody should have called me and been like, we apologize for saying that. This is an overwhelming situation. And, for us, I'm sure it is. So why retaliate against me for years? Like, for years this has been happening. I would drive in my car, and I had been hit by a car when I was walking, and so I would drive very slowly because I was spooked. And I would drive, and I was like, well, maybe they're following me because I'm driving slowly and it's weird or whatever. But I remember driving my son to somewhere, and there was a car following, and I was about to turn into the place we were going, and I said, I'm going to get that officer's number on his car and report it. And then it just drove away because they were listening, like, the whole time, listening on the phone, monitoring what we're doing. That's not right. And if you can spend the manpower doing that, then you can do more to deal with people who are afflicted in our community. I don't mean that you monitor them and you do fascist and totalitarian actions toward them, but okay, you're going to take the time to watch everything I do and retaliate against me and do social control experiments and coercive experiments. You can take time to sit down with somebody who's on drugs and help them get to the care center and help them. You can bring coffee to these people and gently, like, there's a million things you could be doing besides harassing me and using the manpower to harass me. You could be like, yep, we're going to get coffee to these people. We're going to move them out of this area. We're going to get them back to where they go. We're going to get them to, like, why waste the municipal funds to harass me because I don't like what you say? And I will not live in fear. I will not be intimidated. I will not be harmed. I will not be hurt by anyone. And so, that's my story, at least part of my story. I made this film about a dystopian future where there's, like, drones everywhere. It's very video game-ish. It's very, like, dystopian. It was kind of a Black Lives Matter type of film. And it was kind of like that Marvel film. And, it was like this kid who's invincible and he can't. And I will be releasing it as a series as soon as I get through the other millions of things I'm doing, or while I'm getting through those things. And I'll be releasing that as a web series. And I think that, I don't know. I can't say for sure, but I feel like, sorry about that. I feel like we are living in a world where I'm living in a world where, like, they want to control how I create and what I create. and want to retaliate, want to do all these things. And that's just not the world that I grew up in. And that's not the society that we know we have. And we have to maintain this society. We have to preserve it. I mean, I do a lot of things that look at race and gender and marginalized people and people who are, dealing with oppression. So, I mean, that's the beauty of a democracy. This is why we live in a democracy. This is why, this is the beauty of our society, and we have to preserve it. We have to make sure that it stays the way that it should be. And we cannot live in fear, and we cannot live in control, and our public servants have to be held accountable. And just like we're accountable, we have to obey the laws, we have to do what we have to do, we have to do all of these things like everybody does. So, yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm sharing. I am going to every day post every time there is harassment towards me. I am going to talk about this. I am going to reach out every single day, because what's been going on has been absurd. It's been really, really absurd, and cannot go on anymore. So I will keep you posted. Thank you.